Sagoli, and welcome to the Administration for Native Americans webinar on language teacher retention and certification. This webinar is being recorded, which is why you're all coming in on the muted mode, just so we don't pick up any extra sound. This webinar will be available for viewing in about 2 weeks. We have a lot of information to present today, and this webinar is scheduled for an hour, but due to the dynamic presenters that we have, as well as the topic, we will probably exceed that hour. So by all means, feel free to leave the webinar if you have to go. You can always review the recording for what you missed. We will also be having a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. We will also be sending out the PowerPoint after the presentation. Unfortunately, there were some last-minute changes and we weren't able to get it out to you prior. I apologize for that. This webinar is sponsored by the Administration for Native Americans, and it's being hosted by the Eastern Region Training and Technical Assistance Center. ANA has 4 regional technical assistance centers, and the Eastern region encompasses the 37 states from North Dakota straight down to Texas and all the states to the east of that line. We provide pre-application trainings. We also do project planning and development trainings and post-award trainings. And we also provide technical assistance on developing applications. We also work with applicants who are not funded, and we provide help with project implementation. If you would like more information on the services we provide, you can reach us at the contact info provided on the screen. My name is Candy Carmi, and I am the Technical Assistance Specialist for the Eastern Region. I've worked for the Eastern Region now for the past 10 years, and I am a member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. I want to get a plug in for a training that's coming up next month that may interest you. It is a native language-focused project planning and development training. It's a 3-day training. It is free. You can find more information and or register for the training by going to the URL on the bottom of the screen. During this training, we walk folks through how to build a solid community-based language project that hopefully could be funded. Again, if you'd like more information, please visit our website. Today, we're very honored to have 4 presenters that will share information on their native language programs, and more specifically on how they retain language teachers and on their certification processes. The 3 language projects featured today are all current ANA Esther Martinez immersion projects. Our first presenter is Carol Lewis. She's the language program coordinator for the Yurok tribe. Our second presenter is Terry Kinsey. She is the program coordinator for the Sauk language program at the Sac and Fox Nation of Oklahoma. And our third presenters are Adrienne Beauchop and Maria Pasqua, and they are the project manager and the Makah language specialist at the Makah tribe in Washington. So we're all kind of new to this, so I'm hoping that these transitions go well to our presenters. So our first presenter is Carol Lewis, and she's a Yurok tribal member who learned to speak Yurok as an adult through the Master Apprentice Language Program, which originated out of the Advocates for Indigenous California Language Survival. She worked for Advocates as one of the first coordinators of the Master Apprentice Program. After leaving that organization, Carol began working in 1997 as the very first coordinator of the Language Restoration Program for the Yurok tribe, where she has happily been ever since. So now I'm going to turn it over to Carol, and let her start her presentation.
Skuyanikoi, Necknow Carol Lewis, and I'm happy to be with you today. I've been the language program coordinator since 1997. I sometimes say 1996, but it was actually 1997. The Yurok tribe is the largest tribe in California with around over 6,000 members. We're located in the far northwestern corner of California, and our traditional homeland includes the Redwood Forest. When our tribe first started language restoration efforts, our language was very seriously endangered. At that time, we did a survey as to how many speakers we had and what language resources we had. And we found that we only had 20 speakers who were able to speak the Yurok language. These speakers had learned to speak Yurok as their first language, and they had spoken Yurok since they were children, but they had stopped using Yurok as their everyday language of communication for decades. And so their Yurok their language was kind of rusty. In addition to the elders who had been first language speakers, there were a number of other people who could speak the language at semi-fluent levels and who knew some language. So we started at where our language was very depressed. It had been nearly 50 years since a child had learned to speak the language, and it was predicted that Yurok language would be extinct by the year 2010. Okay, there were 20 elders, as I said, who learned to speak as children, but they were in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they were speakers, but they weren't teachers. They also, as I said, were rusty in their speaking of Yurok. They were too elderly to run immersion programs or other types of daily language instruction. So our first task was to get some professional age teachers. So we worked with these elders as in the Master Apprentice program. In addition to doing Master Apprentice, these elders also worked with the program staff along with Andrew Garrett from UC Berkeley, who's worked with us since almost the inception of our language program. All but 2 of these elder speakers are gone now, but they left us with the dream that Yurok can be a living, flourishing language. And so that's what we concentrate on. We concentrate on creating speakers and making sure that our language becomes a living, flourishing language. The elders also left behind recordings, language books, language resources, and apprentices who learned the language from them and who are now teaching Yurok. Currently, we have classes in elementary and high school. We have preschool programs. We have language in the Head Start. We provide language in summer camps, and we also implemented a half-day immersion program. In order to do this, we have our teachers, and in the process, we developed a certification process. Currently, we have 7 credentialed teachers and around 250 people, children participate in language instruction, as well as our community language program, which provides language to any age people. Along this way, since we started with no professional age teachers, we developed an approach to teacher certification. And this picture represents our teachers who were about to be credentialed, and this was just about 5 or 6 years ago. Currently, we have 2 credentialed teachers in their 20s, 3 in their 30s, and 2 over 40. I think that's 39 to be exact. In developing a certification program, I think you need to first think about what type of certification you're going to use. Do you want tribal certification, state certification, or both? Since our program deals a lot with the public schools, we needed to look at state certification, but we very most definitely want a tribal certification also. So a person can work doing community language classes, Head Start, preschool, after-school programs. A lot of these type of programs do not require state certification, but we use the school, so we needed to have state certification. At the time when we started certifying, there was no native language teaching credential in the state of California. We went to the State Commission on Teacher Credentialing, but they were very hesitant to credential teachers. They wanted us to have 4-year bachelor degrees and standard teaching credentials, but there was no place in California that offered training in the teaching of native language where we as a tribe were doing that. So we approached the tribes in California, and we all got together, and the Santa Ynez tribe wrote the legislation and took it to Congress, and it passed in very short order, within 6 months. So it's possible to do that. I think it would be, how difficult that is depends on the state where you come from and how open they would be to creating a native language teaching credential. So when you talk about once you determine what type of credential you're going to do, you need to figure out how you're going to assess the teachers, because we wanted to make sure that our teachers were high-quality teachers. And so what we did is we determined what we wanted these teachers to teach. So in order to credential them, they would have to know a certain amount of language. So we looked at what do we want students to learn, and we developed 3 levels of teaching Yurok: basic, intermediate, and advanced. And then we had 3 different credentials: basic, intermediate, and advanced. When we were looking at developing these different levels of Yurok, we looked at the national standards for teaching world languages, and we used this to develop our framework. The standards can be used as helpers, but you most certainly will need to develop your framework to your own language. For example, we teaching Yurok colors and numbers is very difficult. In English, you teach colors and numbers as one of the first things, but since our counting system is difficult, like there's 14 different ways to count, depending on whether you're counting people or animals or money or straight things or sacks full or, all of these different things. So we spread our teaching of counting and colors over the basic, intermediate, and advanced. So you have to change these standards to meet your language. The next thing we do is to prepare the teacher candidates for the assessment. And so we provide instruction on our frameworks and if necessary, language instruction to ensure that teachers possess necessary language to teach all elements of the framework. We provide actual grammar workshops because remember, we've only been developing fluent speakers for a few years, and so we want to keep developing our language as we go through these credentialing levels. We also want to model excellent teaching methods, including the use of songs, stories, and other things. So once you determine what you're going to assess, you need to determine the tools for assessing your teacher proficiency. And we, again, have 3 elements of assessing. We assess spoken language, we assess written language, and we assess the teacher candidate's ability to listen to language and know what they're saying, translate or transcribe what they hear. The assessment of spoken language is a nice place to start. What we do is we have a picture about 18 by 24 inches, and it has a wide range of Yurok images on it. It's a picture of the ocean where the Klamath River comes in, and we have people swimming, people fishing, basket making. We have a whole bunch of elements of language. So at the beginning level, we look for what we want the teacher to be able to teach. At the end, students are going to have big vocabularies. They're going to have a wide range of common phrases. And then at the intermediate level, we want people to be developing creativity and developing their own sentences and stringing these sentences together. And we find that the advanced level students are able to talk for a very long time. In fact, usually we have to cut them off because their language is very well developed. So we use that picture or a similar picture for all levels of determining where the person's competency lays. This is a tool that we got from ICOS, and it works very well because it's non-threatening. Almost everybody can say a whole bunch about it, even if it's just words or short sentences. So that's the spoken language assessment. The next is written language, and our candidates are given a wide range of written language to respond to, vocabulary, grammar things, like can they say something happened yesterday, today, or tomorrow. We do language functions like greetings and saying goodbye and commands. And again, it's based to the content that we're going to want students to be competent in, and we want our teachers to teach. We find that we can use this in immersion sessions as well. We use it at our immersion teaching situations, and it works because in immersion, we do lots of immersion, but we also do directed learning. So the next thing is we assess is the listening skills of the spoken language, because typically a person learns to understand language before they can speak it. If you think of little children, they can understand a lot more than they can say. But we want to assess how well they can respond to oral speech. So we have a bunch of recordings from our archives, and we put together CDs where they can listen to recordings and then translate or transcribe. And at each level of credentialing, basic, we have basic sentences for them to listen to, and intermediate, and so on. So the assessment is 3 levels. We also have 3 versions of each assessment level, so we have 3 assessments on basic, 3 assessments for intermediate, because this allows for the retaking of tests if a passing score is not reached in the first couple of attempts. We allow our candidates to take an assessment, and if they don't pass their assessment, they don't reach the baseline competency, they can retake in a couple of weeks. The same thing for assessment 2. If they don't pass, they can retake in a couple of weeks. But then we have a 6-week waiting period. We also make sure that each version of the assessment is testing the same type of language knowledge. So all 3 of the basic tests will be testing the same elements, the same type of vocabulary, the same type of grammar functions. For example, can they introduce themselves in an expanded introduction? Do they know how to say past, present, or future? I did it. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it right now. All those different things that make up our framework for teaching Yurok language. And if they don't, we have ongoing professional development sessions so they can develop their language skills. So once your teachers are credentialed, the next critical aspect is retention of language people, because we've lost people who've taken a long time to learn their language, and they may become credentialed, and yet they are taking other jobs, even though they love their language and would like to be working with language usually. And so we did a sit-down to find out what are the factors in causing people to leave the teaching area. And one of the big things is teaching language does not pay enough. Now, it may pay enough by the hour, or it may pay enough by the day, but it's not a full-time job which offers our teachers a living wage or receiving benefits. And if we don't have those things, teachers are more likely to leave teaching Yurok language and do other things, because we have the same needs to earn a living wage and have our benefits as well. And I always say language teachers need to eat too. As language teachers, we often face inadequate teaching materials, because teaching language is a hard job. We're constantly developing things. Like for us, we helped develop the dictionary. I mean, what language teachers other than native language people invent the dictionary? I mean, that was done by a whole bunch of people, different people in English, for example. So we need to be constantly inventing materials and lesson plans, and we need to have assistance and help with that because it's a big job. A teacher support system should include a person whose primary job is developing curriculum and gathering up and packaging the lessons that teachers are creating. And that can make a good assignment for somebody to teach, plus be a curriculum developer in their other time, so they have a full-time assignment. We also think that it's important to offer our teachers professional development. Once they pass the credential, we offer professional development along the whole way because it's important to provide support. Teachers need support of their peers, and they need to continue to develop their teaching and language skills. They need to have the chance to talk to other language teachers to share their challenges and successes and best practices in the teaching of language. So that professional development is a very important piece of retention and retaining teachers. Now, in different areas, it might be other things, but the best thing is to hold a brainstorming group. So in conclusion, this is our approach to credentialing our teachers. It was based on lessons learned from many people. I learned from people who taught native languages all over the United States when I went to workshops and got pieces that I could use and built on it so that it fit our people and it fit our language and it fit our students. So it's important to learn from all of the places that you can learn, and nobody's plan will be exactly right for you. It's also important to realize that our plan was developed in small pieces, and it didn't happen in a year or two. We had to start developing professional-aged people to be our teachers. But as time went on, 2 years, 3 years, it took us nearly 2 decades, since 1997, I guess 18 years since we started to come to a place where we are credentialing teachers, we have a teacher training program, we have a good model for teaching. So we always held groups where we brainstormed and said, okay, we want to make our language a living, flourishing language. What is standing in our way? And each time we did that, we came up with the first things that stood in our way, and then we brainstormed what kind of strategies we would use to overcome the challenges or our barriers. And then at some point, we realized that we had kind of brought it all together and that we had a plan and we were teaching people to speak Yurok and thinking that it was predicted that our language would be extinct in the year 2000, in the year 2010. And before that, we had our first immersion. It wasn't true immersion. We weren't able to do that, but we moved along, and now we can do immersion camp. It is possible to breathe life into a dying language. So I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors, and I'm happy to share what we've done with our program.
Thank you so much, Carol. So our next presenter is Terry Kinsey. Terry has been with the Sauk Language Department for almost 6 years. She was an advocate for Native languages for about 10 years prior to that. Terry is of United Kituwa Cherokee and Yuchi descent. And I am now going to hand it over to Terry. Terry, it'll take a second, but you should have control.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I think Candy told everything that there is important about me. I have been working in language revitalization for quite a long time. And we have a pretty good program. And I'd like to share some of the things that some of the successes and not so good things that have happened with us that have led to the point where we are able to grow our own teachers, get them certified, both tribal and by the state to be teaching in public school environments. And then I'll take some questions at the end if anybody has any. We started out 6 years ago with the Master Apprentice program. The standard Master Apprentice program is usually a one-on-one, one apprentice, one master. But since we had so few speakers, at the time we had 5 speakers left that actually were fluent SOC speakers, that we decided to develop it as a team-based methodology for transmitting the language from older speakers to the younger speakers. That way, if you have a older speaker that's out of the, has sick or cannot be there, you still have other speakers who can take their place, and the learning still can continue. We've just, as a model, as a foundation for our program, Master Apprentice program has given us a way to achieve rapid, fluent, or second language acquisition in our young people. But along the way, we also decided that just because a person is fluent in the language, they may not be just a good teacher. So we also brought in a lot of other things, a lot of other specialists to build on these. We can all agree that young speakers are needed right now, that they need to lead the revitalization of our programs. Even if we have immersion schools where we're teaching the kindergarten, the 1st through 6th grade, and even a little older than that, most of us with a limited number of speakers and a critically endangered language don't have the time to wait for these young kids to grow up and decide they want to spend their life teaching others speaking the language. And even with a small group, a small cadre of young people that have learned the language, that extends the life of the language by up to 40 or 60 years. And we're talking like older teenagers, young people up to 30. And when they're teaching, that gives us another 20 to 30 years for the language. So each successive generation adds on to the life of the language that we are trying to save. Like I said, the team-based Master Apprentice model was a good, solid foundation for passing on second language acquisition to our young people. But we also wanted them to be professional instructors. We wanted them to have language instruction as well as learning to develop curriculum, content, have good time management skills, make good classroom management and decision-making skills, learn to plan their activities, learn to research, and just become overall professional language revitalization professionals. But as a department, we have our limitations as to what we can actually teach our young people. Not all of us are time management specialists. Not all of us have classroom experience that, beyond a year or two. And most of us don't have curriculum development skills. So we bring in people from outside, the specialists that have these qualities that we don't have, that they can teach our young people, and they can give them these skills so they can take these skills back into the classroom when they become certified. The screen you're looking at now, this is our tribal certification requirements. They have to go through this, and usually it takes about 2 years to 2.5 years for them to achieve all of these requirements before they can be tribally certified as SOC language proficient, at least to the extent where they can teach pre-K through 12th and at the public school level. We had our first 2 instructors, first 2 apprentices. Within the first 2 years, they demonstrated the capacity to all of the above. They demonstrated that they had the instruction, that they could develop curriculum, they could lead master apprentice sessions, they could do public presentations and community presentations and community classes, and that they could do the research and develop their materials for these classes. In 2013, both of our language instructors became the first native language teachers to be certified by the state of Oklahoma, and that was quite an achievement for us. And right now, all of our public high school SOC classes are eligible to be certified as world language credit courses. They are built to the curriculum standards by the state. We created a teaching staff. We didn't go out and hire teachers because there weren't any. We took two young people that one didn't know anything, and one was fluent in Kickapoo but never had spoken SOC. And within 3 years, we had these two young people in the public schools, certified by the state, and teaching SOC languages in high school classes. And that's where we got really big-headed about that. We thought, yeah, we're all that. We can do that. So we went looking for some more apprentices. We did recruitment in high schools and high school seniors. We went to the colleges in the region and talked about our program, and we failed pretty miserably in trying to find young people that not only knew what SOC was and knew who the SOC Fox were, but also wanted to spend their time and their life learning to speak it and learning to teach it. We asked the students, why don't you want to come work for us? And the answer was most high school seniors who had never had anything to do with the language they wanted to be doctors and lawyers and make a lot of money from college. And as we all know, language instructors don't make a lot of money. And they didn't have the interest in learning it. They didn't have the passion. And at the time, there was no institutional structures that supported students to learn their language as well at the same time getting a degree so that they are professionals within a certain amount of time, not only language professionals, but also teaching professionals. So we went back to the drawing board, and we decided we grew two, so let's go grow some more teachers. So we decided to take the program to the public schools. We put our SOC classes into 2 public schools here in the jurisdiction, and it eliminated a lot of problems that we'd had with community classes, anything that was extracurricular for these kids. They were already at school. They weren't competing with the extracurricular activities because it was a class. They were actually getting credit for it. And it was an alternative to some of the standard classes like Spanish and German that the schools offered. So it was kind of a new and different thing, and it was more of, it was a native language. It was not something that, everybody did. So it was, we had quite a bit of success with that. And we take that success and we take from the high schools, and each summer we run an internship program where these kids from the high school classes are brought into a summer program. It's intensive, it's immersion. They're given a higher level exposure to the languages than they do within the school system. And we start looking for those kids that have that passion, that have that desire, and have the talent to actually learn to speak the language and understand it and want to learn more. This diagram just basically shows, at the heart of all of our programs, we use the Master Apprentice Learning System. From our world language courses in the high schools to the summer programs and to our new college-level internships, all of our language learning is based on Master Apprentice. For us, that has been a way to develop language skills that doesn't involve doing grammar, writing. It involves listening, learning, and speaking. We have gone from the 2 jurisdictional high schools. We are soon to launch an online World Language Credit SOC 1 and SOC 2 class through the Department of Education. It'll be available in those areas where we don't have teachers. It's online, it's self-taught, and the kids that we don't have a teacher in their school will still be able to get the credit for it, and that'll expand our pool of young people that we can bring in, we can interest in the language, recruit them, and bring them in as teachers. These goofballs are our first official summer youth program. Out of this picture, there are 3 of these young people that are either in the college program or they plan to be in the college program next year when they graduate. The second year, this year we had 5 more that returned. We have at the end of the first summer youth program, we had, can't read this. Most of our interns were evaluated as having, according to ACTF guidelines, either novice, high, or intermediate low proficiency levels. And we had 3 interns expressing an interest in the college program after their graduation, which didn't include the 2 that we already have at the present. The college level interns learn the language in the community, and then they take online courses through our partnership that has the bachelor's program, and they learn the language within a master apprentice immersion environment here. So that way they're getting credit for it, for actually learning the language, which I think is an awesome idea, because we can't have kids going to college and then trying to come back to their communities getting their language instruction. It has to be both at the same time. And so with this new bachelor's degree program, it actually is working. The kids are earning college credit for learning languages. They're taking online classes. And so they're getting a college education while they're also learning their language. Because SOC is there is no books that you can go out and how to speak SOC or the Dummy's Guide to Speaking SOC. So we've tried to develop our own teaching materials, both for the high school classes, the online classes, and our college classes. And we use these in all of our environments as the basis for teaching these young people the language of SOC. We have had a lot of input into these lesson plans and these activities, and most of what we have is replicable for other tribal language programs, and we've given a lot of them out to other programs that want to start using materials that we've developed only in their own languages, and that makes us feel pretty good that there are other language programs out there that are developing their own programs for their young people, and in turn that helps keep the language going. We also developed, as part of our first A&A grant, we developed a master apprentice teaching book, and it is a step-by-step outline for how to begin your master apprentice program and go through 3 years of master apprentice work. It can be used for any other tribal language that wants to start their own master apprentice program, and it is also a good basis. It's what we use for a lot of our basis for our high school and our college classes, because it has a lot of good content and activities that we can utilize in different ways, but at the same time we can use the same ones over and over. So where are we right now? All right, the 2 young people that we've got in these pictures, this one and that one, I don't know if you can see my little pointer, those are our 2 state-certified instructors. The director, Jacob, also received his state certification last year. We have 1 individual in the college program that will graduate next year, and by the time he graduates, he will be eligible for state certification to become a teacher. We had another young lady start in the fall of this past fall. In 3 years, she will be able to graduate, and she'll be eligible for state certification as well as tribal certification. We have 2 high school seniors from our internship program from the public schools and from our summer program that will be graduating, and they plan to join the program in the fall. And I'm done.
Well, thank you so much, Terry. Again, I know some of you have questions for Terry. Terry will hang around until the conclusion of the webinar, and she is available to answer your questions, should you have any. So jot some down, and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Our third presenters are Adrienne Beauchamp and Maria Pasqua. Adrienne is a Makah tribal member and the project manager, and is a certified language teacher. She teaches at the Nia Bay Elementary School. Maria Pasqua is a Makah tribal member and a Makah language specialist for the Makah language program at the Makah Cultural and Research Center located in Nia Bay, Washington. She also teaches Makah language and cultural arts at the Nia Bay High School, Cape Flattery School District number 401. She has Makah teaching certifications from both the tribe and the state of Washington. She is a very busy lady and is getting ready for preparing right now for a weddings of one of her children. So we're very, very lucky to have both of these ladies today. Adrienne, I'm going to be giving you you should be unmuted now, and you should be able to start speaking.
Okay, thank you. So this is our webinar that we have, and we'd like to hit on a little bit of background on our tribal language program and our teachers. So our location, we are in Washington State, and our language is considered a language isolate. It belongs to the Southern Wakashan language family, and our relatives are on Vancouver Island because no one consulted us when they put the U.S.-Canadian border in. But in Washington State, we're considered a language isolate. Our tribe is on the northwest tip of Washington State, and the furthest northwest tip in the continental United States is Cape Flattery, so we're very well known for that location. We are bordered by the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the Pacific Ocean, and we're also known, I would say, as people of the whale, people of the Cape, known as a maritime people. And we have about 2,500 tribal members. Only about 1,600 live on the reservation. So in our recent history in terms of our language program, in the 1960s, Dr. William Jacobson began recording with Makah elders, and he presented various papers on Makah grammar and did some real foundational work on the study of our language. And in the 1970s, we began Makah language and Makah art classes in the Nia Bay schools. That was through the Johnson O'Malley or JOM programs. At the time, it wasn't a written language. So in 1978, the Makah language program begins, and the Makah alphabet is formalized. It's an adaptation of the International Phonetic Alphabet. And our program goals that we made back then was to preserve the Makah language, to restore the Makah language to spoken fluency, and to educate our children and people as scholars able to compete anywhere in today's world and yet maintain their tribal heritage. And so as you have seen from the map, we're kind of in a remote location. We're about an hour and a half away from the nearest larger town and 4 hours away from the nearest large airport, SeaTac. And in the 1980s, we began a team teaching effort in the Nia Bay Elementary School through Indian Education Funds at the time. And the Nia Bay School is a K-12 school. It's a public school located on the Makah Reservation. And at this time, we began teaching in one primary grade and one intermediate grade, second and fifth. And it wasn't like a pilot program at first, and we gradually expanded to now where we are K-7, and language is offered in all of those classrooms. and we taught with elders who already spoke language fluently, and the language helpers or assistants. That's where I started, and we prepared the lessons, and we did this approach for a while. But then our elders became too old to continue that type of a way of teaching, and so we began a mentor-apprentice program in the 1990s, and so those language helpers began as apprentices, and we worked with our tribal elders, our fluent speakers, in order to boost our language, our facility in the language so that we could teach. And then we had to redesign our curriculum for us, for those that didn't speak the language as a mother tongue. So in 1993, a big thing happened. Makah language was offered in the Nia Bay High School as a second language credit. And so our teachers began teaching in the high school for credit. And the Makah tribe declared the Makah language as the official language of the tribe through a resolution process. So in the high school, we range about 100 students, 9th through 12th grade. And in the high school, it's different than the elementary, where the language is just offered to each classroom. It's in the high school, it's offered as an elective, just like any language, Spanish or any other second language. And about 15 to 20% of our students take the language now. And this is just a picture of our students on a field trip to the Burke Museum, which holds a lot of Makah artifacts and research information. But we have it that way, and we've had Makah 1, 2, and 3 developed for the high school. Next. So in 2002, the Makah language program developed teacher criteria for Makah teachers, and meetings began to happen with the different tribes in Washington State about how to embark on getting certification that's recognized by the state. And so from 2000 to First Peoples Language and Culture certification began as a pilot process, and we were first under the State Board of Education in this pilot process. The pictures that you see there are just some of our language teachers. That's myself and Adrienne when we are teaching, and when she received her teaching credentials. We have a celebration for our language teachers when they, our trainees when they become language teachers. Next slide. So then in 2004, the First Peoples Language and Culture Certificate was established as a tribal and state process of certification through the Washington State Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. So it then moved from the State Board of Education to the Professional Educators Standards Board. So it became a process within the state now, so it's monitored through the regular certification office. So all these teachers in the picture, we're all tribally and state certified. For teacher recruitment and retention, 2004 to the present, we have 9 Makah tribal members who have received their certificates, and we have 2 trainees, 8, and we have 2 trainees in the process. At present, we have 4 certified teachers in our program and 2 trainees that are employed in our program. So just to mention, there were some teachers that moved on to other areas now, but they all work for the tribe and they all work in educational departments. Next slide. So for future prospects, we have other students who are very interested in becoming language teachers, and we have a recent high school graduate. He was one of our top language students. He'll be attending Dartmouth and Hanover, New Hampshire to pursue a degree in linguistics. We're so excited about this because up to now we have hired other linguists to work on our language, and when he completes his program, we will actually have a Makah linguist. So we're very excited about this.
And as far as future prospects go, we have a couple of other recent high school graduates that are interested in getting certified to teach our language, even as opposed to going to college. So they're pretty excited. There's a lot of pride in the language, and that makes our hearts happy.
So the First Peoples Language and Culture Certificate is offered to Washington State tribal language teachers, and our program offers 2 certificates, and it's based on research as far as where students or learners top off with learning language. So of course 0 through 6 is preferred, but kindergarten through 5th grade is a high time for learning language, where about age 12 students grow in their mind and can think abstractly, and their way of learning language changes. So our certificate is based on kind of a research-based way that people learn language, rather than the traditional K-8 certificate that the state offers and the 9th through 12th secondary certificate. We go elementary 6 to 12, and middle high school is a separate certificate, 6 to 12th grade.
And we also actually have been working the past couple of years in the early Head Start program. So we are working also with ages 0 through 5, and we are doing sort of like immersion type things up there. And that's a new thing for us. We just started that. We're just finished 2 years in the 0 to 5 age group.
Okay. And so just to mention again, with this First Peoples Language and Culture Certificate, the requirements we have in our program has to do with Makah literacy, because we no longer have any mother tongue speakers left, but we have been recording with our elders since the 70s, and we have a lot of audio that still needs to be transcribed, but we have a lot of information that we've gathered over the years because our program has had a long longevity. And so we want our teachers to be literate in the language, to have grammar skills for instructional Makah, and more grammar skills are required in the 6th through 12th certificate, because you have to teach in a different way or cover more information for them. Lesson delivery, and also Makah cultural competencies. We want every teacher brings different things to the table, but we want them to want our lessons to reflect our culture. And also classroom competencies, so they're able to function in the classroom and be comfortable in the classroom with methods of like behavior management and the needs of the students. And then our local education agencies' policies and procedures. So if a teacher is going to teach in the elementary, they need to know what the elementary handbook says and conduct themselves in the same way as the other teachers, so that we're in the school culture environment as well. And then, of course, it's to promote our Makah language program goals, which is has to do with spoken fluency. Next slide. So the First Peoples Language and Culture Certificate requires the following items: a completed background check, a certificate of completion of child abuse and neglect course, and a copy of the certificate that we use to certify our teachers, and that's our tribal language certificate. Next slide. So this is a little diagram about the language assessment, and we use an interview that helps us determine the language level of our teacher trainees. And this is just a comparison example. You kind of renamed it into our own way of how we think about our language. So the American Council on Teaching a Foreign Language, called ACTFL, their guidelines are novice, low, medium, high. We call that minimally proficient, and we realize there's low, medium, and high areas of that. And then their intermediate level, we call it conversationally adequate, also with low, medium, high. Advanced is what ACTFL calls the next category. We call that conversationally proficient. And superior, we call that traditionally proficient, because that's specific to us. It's specific knowledge of a traditional area. It might be weaving or song leading or the role of a speaker, or maybe someone that's involved in canoe, and that they're proficient in that area. Then distinguished is master level proficiency for us. It's when you completely know the language and can think in the language and dream in the language. And then for this certification process, I just wanted to also say that the state requires renewal every 5 years. So the next thing is the interview. This is what we do to determine where our teacher trainee is, like what their language level is. And we use something that's based off of a California document that when we were training in our mentor apprentice program out of Berkeley. And so it's a warm-up with just basic greetings and what do you like to do. This is all conducted in the language. And then we have initial dialoguing, like have them tell us information about themselves or one of their family members in complete description as much as they can in the language. And then personal dialoguing to tell us about their likes and dislikes or something they want to say, maybe an opinion they have where they're talking and expressing themselves. And then we have some discussion on foods, traditional foods, and whether they know what their favorite food is and how to get it, how to prepare it, how to cook it, and that type of thing. And then we also have visuals, so the interviewee has a chance to choose any type of domain or visual that they think they can demonstrate the most language on. It might be a kitchen, or maybe it's an activity or a cultural event, and then they describe in detail that scene, and they can demonstrate what they know from labels all the way up to discussing it, the visual. And then we do a role play of eating together in the language, and then there's kind of just a wind down from completely speaking in the language and thanking them for their time, and then we switch to English in this interview. Next slide. The next questions are in English, asking them what their intent is, why they think they can learn the language, and why they want to learn the language, and how do they see themselves using, I should say the language. And there's it just helps us to see what they want to do and how they see themselves in years to come, and hopefully pushing themselves to higher fluency levels. And next slide.
Retention. I know there's a lot of talk amongst the tribes on how you can get teachers, but how do you keep them? And we have had probably a few of our teachers leave, and it was usually because of one of these things. It was usually because of the pay wasn't enough, or the hours weren't enough, or they actually went to pursue something that, a different degree, which ultimately is more pay. But one thing that we've really had some good luck with, I guess, in our program is we have a focus on flexibility. We don't limit our employees to, well, you have to be 8 to 3 or you have to be 9 to 4. We basically leave that open, and our employees have expressed that the flexibility of our program is one of the huge factors for why they love their job so much. They can work on the weekend at the office if they need to. They can, work half a day one day and a full day the next day. I mean, we've got some really, really good flexibility going on. The wages, one of the things that have really helped us is that our school actually pays the teachers in the elementary and the middle school for the actual instructional hours and the prep hours. So when we're working at the school, we're paid by the school, and they pay us as a consultant, which is a far better rate than what we are making at our museum. And then the rest of our hours are spent at the museum doing some of the other stuff. So that's probably a huge factor also, because I know, I probably couldn't make it on, what I was paid hourly. And I actually had to leave for about a year or two and hated it, but left because of pay, and I ended up coming back. Personal growth, I think that our program has a really good goals. We sit down and Maria makes sure we're on task with this 5-year program, or 5-year plan. And we sit down every 5 years. We review the previous 5-year plan. What goals did we meet? What new goals do we need to set? What things don't apply anymore? And we do a brand new plan based on the previous one, sort of. And then that seems to kind of help everybody's perspective and help us to be team players, which is the next point, that we do our best to really support one another and be a team. You know, I mean, if that means that I need to stay, you know, Maria and I need to stay after to help, you know, write a grant, we into the hours of the night, we do that. I mean, we really focus hard on being team players. And then commitment and cultural pride, I think, is also another big deal. And I know that I heard somebody say in a previous presentation that they couldn't get their high school students to come be teachers. And I think we're unique in that we actually have some students who want to do that, and it's just a real big deal out here to be able to work where we're working, to be able to do what we do, and so it is looked upon as very, very favorable, and it's very valued. So I think that the cultural pride plays a huge part in that.
And this is just a picture of one of our language teachers, Yvonne Wilkie. She was a tribal dance leader teaching and preparing children to dance at our annual Makate celebration in August. And so the teaching doesn't stop just within the school year. Whatever cultural events are going on in our community, it seems like our language teachers are usually very involved. And in our plan for the future, we are all second language speakers, but we hope to do more fast-track Makah so that we're using and modeling the language as much as possible, and that we continue doing these 5-year plans to develop vision for our language program, the tribe, and also individual development. And I just wanted to say one other thing with our language teachers. We do try to provide training for them for cooperative learning, cross-peer tutoring, total physical response, CPR, immersion, and then to attend things that the school is giving as well, and to develop their expertise in cultural areas, whatever it may be, carving, weaving, dancing. Everyone brings their own uniqueness as a teacher, and we just want our language brought back to spoken fluency, and it takes a lot of work. It didn't disappear overnight. It's not going to come back overnight, but it's going to take steady commitment and progression with our goals to breathe life into our language again. This year we will teach language preschool through our adult, and we're excited and thankful for the journey we're on. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies. That was a great presentation. So I'm now going to open it up for any questions and to the presenters. Terry, one of the participants wanted to know how they could get your Master Apprentice Handbook.
If they wanted to email me, then I'd be happy to send them out a copy.
Okay, and we do have Terry's email. Is in the presentation, but her email address is language@sac&fox-nation-nsn.gov. And we will be sending out a copy of this PowerPoint at the conclusion of the webinar. Someone wanted to know what ACTFL stands for. It's ACTFL. Adrian and Maria, do you want to explain it?
It's just the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. So it's sort of a national model, although there are also world language standards as well. So some tribes might look into that. This is American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Language.
Right, and you can go to their website and download information that can help you develop proficiency scales if your tribe does not already have them developed. They kind of walk you through how to develop proficiency scales. So that it's pretty helpful. Someone would like to know if there Marcella McIntyre had a question. How often do teachers have to recertify for both state and tribal certifications? So I'll ask you that first, Adrienne and Maria, and then I'll go to the other panelist.
Washington State requires every 5 years for recertification.
And what about in your tribal certification?
Our tribal certificate stands. Once you obtain it, you have it, but the state requires renewal every 5 years.
Terry, what are your renewals like? How long do you have the certifications for?
Our certifications for the state of Oklahoma are for native language teachers. For the first 2 years, it's every year. And then after that, it's and they have a certain amount of hours that they have to get for professional development in order to recertify, 60 hours. And then in the third year, then they go to every 3 years. So the first 2 years, it's once a year, and then in the third year, they can go to every 3 years. So it's fairly new. It just started in 2013, so they're still trying to figure out how to put us into the system and make it equal, and it's not equal, but it works. So, but yeah, in the first 2 years you have to certify every year. Then as of the third year, it's every 3 years.
Okay, and Carol, I'll pose the question to you. How often do teachers have to recertify in California?
In California, the state credential requires that you recertify after 2 years and after 3 years, and that the third certification is a lifetime credential. Our tribe has adopted the same system, so that after 2, 3, so 5, it's a lifetime credential. And it works well because we certify at different levels. Your first credential allows you to teach at the basic level, second, intermediate level, and third, advanced level. So we still are building fluency of our teachers. So we certify them early because we didn't have any teachers who were fluent. It would have taken us a long time, so we started out with basic certification because that's what all of us were teaching when we first started, and we've grown our language competency over the years. Tribal certification, the tribe itself determines what that's going to be, and ours seem to work well with the state certification model.
I think what this highlights is that everyone, tribes and states are, all have different requirements. So this really highlights that. I have a question from Carla. Carla, I just unmuted you. Do you still have a question?
Yes, I do. My question, I believe, is for Carol from the Sock and Fox. Is her name Carol?
It was Terry Kinsey from Sack and Fox.
Okay, Terry. First of all, I wanted to know how much staff do you have in your language department?
Let's see. Right now we have, well, including the director, we have 3 teachers. There's me, and then we have our admin assistant, and then we have our, they're not really staff, but we have our 2 college interns that are here every day. So that's about it. We're a pretty small department.
Okay, yeah, you're getting a lot done. So what is the age of the 2 teachers? You said you referred to them as young people. What is their age about?
When they started or right now?
Right now.
Let's see. One is 20, she's 23, and the other one is 20, just turned 27.
Okay, so The reason I'm asking is because I'm kind of curious. When the you invest in the young people, you have not found that it's a problem that once they get into adulthood, they leave the language for a while or go raise families, or you lose that investment for a while. That hasn't been a problem for you?
Not quite yet. We've had some issues with some interns that we've brought in before they actually became staff that wanted to, not do this, or had decided to go ahead and start families. So that was an issue before they actually became staff. But since they became staff, we really haven't had any. The staff that we have, they haven't really had any issues. And and we're pretty lenient in terms of our staff and what they can do, and we try to work with them and try to build the idea that this is a family, and so and we try to make it so that they don't feel like it's a 9-to-5 job. I think that's what the McCaws were saying. It's we have to be here at a certain time. Obviously they have to be at school at a certain time, but we try to make sure that everyone is comfortable and everyone is enjoying what they're doing, because that makes a big difference. If you're flexible and people are enjoying what they're doing, then they're liable to stay longer.
Mm-hmm. So are your interns done in bachelor's programs, or are they in like a provisional state certification?
The way the state, we actually worked on the state. They changed the state ruling 2 years ago, in 2012, and they changed the ruling so that the requirements for the state is they have to have a degree. They didn't specify as to whether that was a high school degree or if it was a college degree, and so they basically left that up to the tribes as to what kind of degree the tribe would have, because the tribe is basically, in Oklahoma, the tribes are basically responsible for providing the state with the information that these are certified, these people are certified by the tribe to teach this language.
I see.
So, yeah, the state did give us that much leniency, so that's a good thing.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Thanks, Terry, and thanks, Carla. I have a question came in from Allie Holsclaw, and it's actually to all of the presenters. And she asked, you all mentioned state and tribally certified teachers and programs, and I am wondering if any of your state certified teachers can teach in a regular public school, or if the state credential that you have is only for teaching the language. We have a state language teaching license to teach only language in our local public school. We do not have a regular state teaching license for public schools, and this causes a lot of criticism of our program. So who wants to answer that one?
I can answer that one for us.
Okay.
This is Terry. According to the state legislature and the state Native American language teaching certification rules, without a bachelor's degree in education or an additional teaching certificate, Native language teachers can only teach their language in the public school systems. So that's where our teachers are right now. They are progressing through the new tribal languages bachelor's program, which gives them not only more language development, but also gives them the teaching skills and the skills to get a certificate so they can teach like another subject if it comes up. They're given that option. One of them has that option, and the other one decided she didn't want to do that. She just wants to teach the language. She's very dedicated. But that's where ours are, is what we have the same issues, is that unless they have a teaching certificate issued by the state on another subject, they can't teach any other subjects.
Is that the same for you, Carol?
That's the same for me, and all teaching credentials in the state of California are like that. You have authorization to teach math or English or whatever, just like you have certification to teach native language, and that's what you teach. We're just embarking on a program, looking for funding for a program where our teachers, our language teachers, will also have another credential where they can teach another subject within the public schools. And we think that's a good way to go, because then we can make these full-time positions where they're teachers, not only native language there, but also other subjects, so they can have full-time employment with full teacher benefits. And so that's where we're going.
Adrian and Maria, is that the same for you?
It's pretty much the same. Before the First Peoples Language and Culture Certificate was created, I went to school to get a K-8 certificate, and I taught homeroom classroom in the elementary for 3 years. But my heart was always to teach language, and it was more to qualify myself, because we have to run on grants, and they always ask for qualification of key personnel. So the amount of training any teacher gets is always very helpful for that process. And then I got a McCaw endorsement onto my certificate, which endorsed me for K-12 for the state system. The big problem with that is if people take McCaw, like say if it's offered in some way, or a tribal language offered in a college, and tribal member that route, but the way we do the First Peoples Language and Culture is you have to be back. It's a state tribal agreement, and you have to be a tribal member to get that certificate. And that way the tribe, is certifying their own people, as opposed to someone just studying the language.
And in our program, we actually have 2 out of our 8 certified language teachers. 2 of them, which would be Maria and another one named Crystal, they both have their elementary certification. So one of them is teaching in kindergarten right now. It's the regular kindergarten teacher, and then Maria is in the high school. So we're kind of, I guess, lucked out there. And then all the other teachers that actually aren't with us are working in the education department somewhere. And then for the rest of us that are in the elementary and middle school, they put us in with the children during the planning hour for that teacher. So we basically get to take the kids to our own classroom and do our own thing for about an hour, 2 days a week per class. So we can do pretty much what we want, but of course, our focus is always language. I hope that helps.
Can you hear me, Candy?
Yes.
I'd like to add a little comment about the criticism that they want to do of native language teachers, because we may not have bachelor's degrees or the standard teaching credential. But in some ways we're so much more educated in terms of our own language. For example, your teachers invented the darn dictionary. That is a good piece of work. We've invented everything. We've invented the teacher model. We've invented the curriculum. Most teachers do not do that when they go to teach. Other language, Spanish teachers didn't invent the dictionary. They didn't invent all the curriculum. They didn't invent the model. We're very well educated in what we do, and I'm always glad to tell them that.
You're right, Carol. That's a very good point. There's one last question here. It's, do any of your programs have a system in place for apprentices that progress? And I thought maybe, Terry, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have any system in place for apprentices that do not progress?
Yes, well, I don't know if it's in place. We are trying out a pilot program here this summer with some interns that don't want to. I mean, it's a temporary pilot. I mean, it's just to try out some programs to try out a different skill level with some young people that basically they don't want to be in Master Apprentice and Immersion and teach, or they just don't have the capacity to learn a language, which we find that quite often. There are some people that love the language, but they just cannot learn it. There's something in their brain. And that's okay, because we're trying to find a place for everyone that wants to learn, that loves the language. We want to find a place for everyone. So we're trying out a pilot program this summer, and it's a 5-week program, and we're bringing in some young people, and it's very structured, and we're teaching them different skill sets each day. Well, they have a schedule, and they're learning different skill sets that will teach them how to develop websites, curriculum, films, videos, things that we can use, actually develop. We're teaching them to use the electronic and computer skills to develop additional curriculum that we can use in our classrooms and in our community classes. So they're still learning the language because all these things are going to be in the language, but what they're developing is the products that a lot of times our teachers don't have time to actually develop, to work with. So everything that they're producing goes back into the classrooms, goes back into the community classes, goes back onto, the websites that we give to tribal members. So we're trying to see if this is a different path for interns that just either don't want to or just don't have the capacity to be in immersion, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and on the college path. Because we have come across that before. So we're hoping this works out, and it'll give young people that want to be involved a different way to be involved with the language.
Thanks so much, Terry. Well, I want to thank all of our presenters today. Thank you all, ladies, for all offering your insight into your programs, and thank you for the work that you're doing in your communities. I want to also thank all of our participants today who joined us on the webinar. And if you'd like to check out the recording, that will be available shortly. And I will be sending out the PowerPoint at the conclusion of this webinar. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.